Welcome to the Mint Door Podcast with Dr. Karen Tyndall and Dr. Laura Schwint.
Are you feeling like a high achiever stuck in a rut? Well, the Mint Door Podcast is your escape hatch. But before we dive into today's inspiring guests, let's talk about adding some serious flavor to your week.
We want to introduce the Mint Julep, our weekly newsletter that is the perfect antidote to burnout. It's more than just words on a screen. It's a virtual happy hour with a supportive community of high achievers brimming with inspiration, positivity, and a dash of fun.
Think of it as your chance to unwind, recharge, and rediscover the joy in everyday hustles. Sign up for the Mint Julep with the link in the show notes, and let's clink glasses or coffee mugs to a more inspired and joyful life, 1 week at a time.
Perhaps you need a visual pick-me-up. Well, we've got you covered. You can find all our podcasts and bite-sized coaching tips on YouTube at youtube.com/@themintdoor. There you can subscribe for happiness on the go.
And so now a little bit about our podcast guests today. You see, Sober Life Rocks began when Laura Nelson stood before a dental retreat audience and asked how many people were sober. Surprisingly, close to 15% of those present raised their hands. And out of those that raised their hands, none of them knew each other. They felt isolated and alone. Moreover, the meeting planner confessed that it had never occurred to her that providing sober options for evening events was important.
So over lunch and an Uber ride with Margy Schaller, the idea was sparked to create something beyond their own struggles in navigating meetings sober. They felt a calling to build bridges for others. Now from that spark emerged a vision. No one goes to a dental meeting alone again. Laura and Margy envisioned Sober Life Rocks as a tapestry of inclusivity in the professional networking world. Their core belief revolves around a big tent philosophy, embracing and valuing individuals regardless of their drinking choices. It's not about changing habits, it's about honoring alcohol-free choices.
And so at the heart of Sober Life Rocks thrives a vibrant community, diverse yet united in their belief that networking and professional events can be enriching and enjoyable without the focus on alcohol. Laura and Margy have meticulously curated events and resources that reflect this ethos, aiming to ensure every member feels empowered and embraced. So without further ado, let's get busy on the Mint Door Podcast with Sober Life Rocks. Well, hey, listeners, welcome to today's edition of the Mint Door Podcast, where we are bringing you one of the dynamic duo behind Sober Life Rocks. So Margy Schaller is unable to be with us today, but we have been blessed with Laura Nelson to bring us this great information of this new group community that they masterminded together. So Laura, thanks so much for being here. We can't wait to get into this conversation.
Awesome. And Margy says, sorry, she couldn't make it. We are like dividing and conquering with, there's so much good things happening that we're kind of having to like divide and conquer for meetings, but I'm glad to be here with you guys.
Well, a lot of great things happening is a positive thing. So we'll take it. And we know that you will give us Margy's interpretation and energy as yourself here today. So thanks for being here. And let's get busy. Let's figure out what this is and how it started.
Yeah. So Laura, maybe if we could ask you, first of all, we want you to spill the tea, but what was the aha moment that ignited you and Margy's Sober Life Rocks journey?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So Margy and I've actually known each other for a long time, probably 15 years. We're both in the dental industry. We actually, the first time we ever met, we didn't even like each other. So it was in a scenario where somebody had one expectation with her and a different expectation with me. We were forced into this meeting. she was trying to get something done. I was trying to get something done. And so we've passed each other in, other events over the years and have just been like friendly. How are you? Hi. But through that time of knowing her, I knew that she was sober. She hasn't drank in 19 years. And I knew she was sober. I was one of the only people in the industry who knew she was sober. And I, on the other hand, wasn't. I was very active in, normal conference type lifestyles of late night socializing, happy hours, after conference events, in personal, life. And woke up in 2020 and thought, I think I might have a relationship issue with alcohol. So I stopped drinking in 2020. And we were in the pandemic, so I was home, and that was easy-ish because I wasn't on the road, but got back on the road to start speaking again in 2022. And one of the very first few conferences I went to, I was going back to my room early because the evening events were all about alcohol. And I was like, what's the point of being here if I'm not networking and I'm not connecting? But why does this have to be so like always about alcohol? But didn't think of anything, didn't do anything. I had bought Sober Life Rocks, the website URL, when I got sober, and I thought maybe I'll sell swag, or I don't know, I'll do something with it. And it's been sitting there dormant. I was invited to be on a panel at DO, Dental Entrepreneur Woman, in October, November of last year. And I was asked to be on Mind, Body, Spirit panel, which, if anybody knows me, I'm all about business and coaching and consulting and speaking and training teams. I'm not mind, body, spirit. I kind of think woohoo when I think mind, body, spirit, right? For me. And so I'm on this panel, and I happen to mention that one of the reasons I'm on the panel is because I'm sober. And there was about 125 women in the room. And I said, how many people in here consider themselves sober, curious? I don't even know why I asked that. But when I did, about a quarter of the room raised their hand. I knew Margy was there, and Margy was sober, but the rest of everybody else kind of just raised their hand sort of hesitantly, like they didn't want to spread it. They've never been asked, but they felt, and that day was the pivotal change, because that day was the day, first of all, everybody didn't know everybody else was there not drinking. You assume everybody's drinking because everybody's got a red Solo cup or a lime in their drink. You assume it's alcohol. Sober choices can be very lonely, right? So you just don't talk about it. We realized that why don't we know about each other, like support each other and celebrate each other? And then lastly, the meeting planner came up to me afterwards and said, I had never even thought about sober choices at our evening events. And the only thing she had planned at night was wine, beer, and water. And that was the day Margy and I went to lunch the next day. And, Margy has been quiet about her sobriety. I haven't been, but I didn't realize like how important it was. And that's when Sober Life Rocks bloomed or launched, because we were like, we need to change this. This needs to be something people celebrate, not necessarily hide and not share with the world.
Yeah. So from people being vulnerable at the initial outset, and sharing that, how did that initial spark that was created get to a point now where you have a thriving community that really is reshaping how the meeting industry looks? How did that transformation?
Well, so we're continually evolving. In fact, you're the first podcast we're on for me to talk kind of about the new evolution of Sober Life Rocks. As you know, with small businesses, you kind of try this and you're like, okay, part of that worked, some of it's not working. Now we're pivoting this way. So the spark, or where it kind of grew from, was the idea that most people have when they embrace sobriety or embrace sober choices, it's a lot easier at home when you're with support system, when you can decide what's in your refrigerator, when you're not out till 2 a.m, when you're not at networking events, there's not as much pressure. It's kind of like being on a diet, you can pick what's in your fridge. Where we thought there was a missing need in our industry, but actually now we're branching into all industries, was that we get on the road. And once we get on the road for a conference, a seminar, we're a speaker, we're a consultant, whatever, you hit the airport and there's alcohol everywhere. It's 5 o'clock somewhere at 7 in the morning, right? There's people at the bar drinking. And then you get to events and the evening events, happy hours, the pressure to drink wine or have a beer or whatever. That the thing that was missing was for, successful professionals who now though have to hit the road and go to these events where it's very indulgent, right? You barely get outside, you barely get sleep, you don't go to the gym unless you really push yourself, you eat what you probably wouldn't eat at home, and you many times drink excessively, or at least the pressure to drink is there. So that's really where it kind of started, and we started getting a following, and it's really, really starting to take off.
So it's like one little thing is now having a waterfall effect, that it's all those rivers are coming into be a bigger force together. So congratulations to you guys.
Thank you
for getting this off the ground.
Yeah, and I love the that you bought the URL, and I mean that right there, that was just like the wink that it was going to be something, right?
And it's funny, we do sell swag. We're working on that. That's kind of a side shop thing now. But when we started, there's this idea around sober, like this word sober, right? It's so striking. It's so, right? And so we question, and people question us like, do you want to have the word sober in there? Or is it too? And we made the decision to keep the word sober because in the general public, that is what it is. And you can choose to drink less or be alcohol free or have a mocktail, not have a mocktail, 0 proof drinks. There's a whole bunch of conversations around that. But my favorite thing is that like when I went to the bank and I had to change accounts, and I was changing from one bank account to another. And the lady was like, okay, Sober Life rocks and whatever. And I'm just on my phone, and she looks up and she's like, does it? And I'm like, does it what? And she's like, does it rock? And I'm like multitasking. I'm like, what is she talking about? Oh, Sober Life. Oh, I'm like, yeah, Sober Life rocks. Yeah. Like that's the idea. Like just, it's not supposed to be hidden, and I'm proud of my choices, and it does rock. And if you want to know why, I'll talk to you about it. If you don't, that's okay too. I don't care. But that was kind of funny where I was like, we picked the right name. Definitely.
Yeah, it's a great name. And, it does bring up great conversation. And I suppose it feels a little bit like you're really shaking things up, normalizing sober choices, sober understanding, sober curiosity. And I think that's really great. So as you're going down this road, and you guys are new in this adventure with your business, but what are you seeing as trends that are starting to shift because of this conversation?
A whole bunch of things. Society as a whole, I'm sure you guys have seen it. Society as a whole is moving more towards this curiosity around sober choices. 41% of Americans right now are either trying to stop drinking or drink less. We've just come out of the pandemic, not just, but we've come out of the pandemic where alcohol use disorder got worse because people were home and it was stressful and there was real anxiety, and it's 5 o'clock at noon when you're on, so there's all the memes and the jokes and all of that. What we have found in this conversation, and we just talked about this in our community meeting actually 2 days ago, was that people are actually starting to have real conversations about whether they've had addiction problems in their family. Maybe they grew up in a household like this, or maybe they never drank and they've just never told anybody because maybe it's a religious or a health issue. Or they're being more willing to talk about it, because the thing is in the past, the idea was you were an alcoholic or you weren't, right? And it's a self-diagnosed disease. I mean, when are you not, right? And what this conversation is bringing, and I think Sober Life Rocks brings to the table, is that alcohol use disorder is a spectrum. And you're on it somewhere if you're drinking alcohol and you've ever drank for the wrong reason, regretted drinking, woke up hungover. Just having the discussion might be all that's needed, of just like, what is your relationship with alcohol? And so we are loving that people are having this discussion and they're thinking about it and respecting what alcohol is, and not saying you have to, we don't care what's in your cup, but we just want to make sure that everybody understands, like, you could be anywhere on the spectrum and that's totally fine. It's okay to choose not to drink. And we want to make that okay.
And I love the fact that it's the conversation, because I think that, like you said, when you ask people to raise their hands and they were hesitant, and by talking about this more, you don't have to be hesitant about that, raising your hand. And no one should feel, for any reason, hesitant to express who they are, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly. And it's so much of our life now around, I mean, you guys talk about this a lot, like mental health and wellness, and we're trying to do so many good things and we're becoming more aware, which is amazing. And all of that's great, but we still have this relationship, and it's not even like a personal thing. I mean, society, like alcohol's everywhere. We see ads for like, you're going to be sexy, healthy, funny, and rich if you drink. And mommy wine culture, and you deserve wine. And so it's in our society, which, okay, but that doesn't mean that you have to make the decisions that everybody's making. But by choosing not to, you are going against the norm. And it is great to be empowered and embraced by people who understand what it's like to go against the norm a little bit.
Well, and that right there is so much more of a discussion, the going against the norm. And like your sign, normalizing sober choices, is going against the norm.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So, but I think that as humans, that's what we're meant to do.
Yep. Yeah.
In order to evolve, right?
Right. And we have people in our community. It was very interesting. We were at an event, and I have somebody in the community who, she's a professional salesperson, loves her jobs, doing really great. Nobody in her company knows she's sober. She fakes it. She fakes drinking because it's almost, she feels like it's a job requirement. And, there was two of us who were very vocal. I mean, I think I was wearing Sober Life Rocks at the time. And she's like, how do you do that? Like, how are you okay? How would you? And I'm like, it's something I'm proud of. Right. So we're not expecting everyone to have to raise their hands high and stuff. But Margy and somebody in our community was like, I don't want to be the poster child for Sober Life Rocks. I'm like, don't worry, we already are. Like, you don't have to, because we are. So it's just that. And we were at dinner this past week, and some people actually thanked us afterwards because they always feel the pressure to have to drink. And because there were people not drinking, and there was a discussion around it. Some people drank, some people didn't. It's okay. We don't care. Right. But we shouldn't have to feel the need to have to fake drinking. If you don't drink, it should be okay.
Well, and thank you for bringing that up, because, I guess I never really even realized that people felt that way, that they'd have to fake it, because they felt so uncomfortable. And that's just not right.
Right. And it's personality style, right? I mean, it's people raising their hand for help or saying, I don't want it. Like, some people just follow what's the norm. So we're just trying to make something else normal too.
Is there when you described like the example of that lady who was hiding it, what's the mindset change that needs to happen for somebody like that, when they can go from feeling that they can't say, this is me, to getting to a point where they're proud to maybe even not wear your t-shirt, but proud to say, I'm sober and this is okay?
Yeah. I think it has to do a lot with, we need people who are willing to stand on the mountaintop and set the path, right? To what would this person do? Right. So my story, when I decided that I have an issue with alcohol, I mean, I knew it, right? It's in your head for months and years before that. It's not like one day you woke up and you're like, I wonder, right? But I saw somebody speak on stage who is in our industry, who at the time was sober, and she is somebody I've respected for 20 plus years. And when she was on stage, she said that she had realized she had a problem with alcohol when she was skipping doing things with her friends and instead going out and hanging out with her best friends, Ben, Jerry, and Chardonnay. And she decided that was when she needed to get her life under control and had stopped drinking. And all I needed to hear was that story for me to think, if she could do it, if she could from the stage, I could do it too. Right. And it gave me and so for us to be able to say, like, for me to get on here, hopefully somebody's listening to this that will say, you know what, if they can do it, or they relate to somebody in our community or then I can do it too. Right. And so I think it's literally about having some people go first to allow others to just feel like, it's okay. And it's okay. Right. So
individuals who are role models, who are leading the way and being those luminaries in this movement is part of it, but also is the meeting planners and the meetings who are organized, who are putting these things together. How does Sober Life Rocks support that side with events and equipping them with what tools and strategies and resources that they need for people to feel welcome at their events?
So we have been really lucky we just started 5 months ago. So this has been like a huge wave, right? And so in the first 5 months, we've already connected with 4 or 5 different conferences that are doing it different ways. We are working with them in ways to bring alcohol-free. So many times for people who aren't sober, who have never had to go to a bar to order a drink, many times at conferences specifically, they take us to a room where there's entertainment or something, and they roll up the black bars, and there's 3 kinds of beers, 3 kinds of wine, and maybe some mixers. And to order a drink, especially for somebody who's trying something new or maybe in recovery, it's very hard to order a drink. And then when you order a drink, you're worried about what people are thinking. And so we throw a lime in it, we try to hide it or whatever. So just by giving better options at the bars so that there are adult looking drinks without alcohol in it, right? To have one of the things we suggest, like a framed sign where they can just point to something and say, I'll take that. And then there's not a lot of discussion around it. Make the drink look adult. Have better inclusive spacing so people can hang out and talk and be involved, but not have to be standing at a bar, right? Like let's have some seats where there's more networking. So there's a lot of things that meetings can do. And so these meetings have reached out to us, and they're integrating different things depending on the size of the meeting or what they offer. And our biggest push this year is to get the meetings to pay attention, because it's many times, especially at a large meeting, it's very old school paradigm. This is the way we've always done it. And they know meeting attendance is down, and their only solution to fix the meeting attendance, not only, but a lot of them, is to put more alcohol in it. And so then that's not getting the people to show up. And there's a lot of people who are missing meetings because of the pressure to drink. So our push this year is to build up our community so that we can show meetings. We have hundreds and thousands, I hope one day, in this community that would come to your meetings if we could make them more inclusive. And so it's kind of a two-part process. First, it's like serving the community so people feel celebrated and understood, and we can lift each other up, and then going to the meetings to say, okay, it's time to make changes, because this is just very old school the way it's been done, and helping them with making it more inclusive.
Yeah, we experienced Sober Life Rocks in March when we went to the PDA meeting, didn't we, Laura?
Yeah. And that was such a success. I wasn't even there, to see it remotely having an impact is just awesome.
Yeah, we still talk about our drink.
We do. We absolutely loved our drink, and we loved having a choice, because it comes down to, you said you're on the health and wellness panel, and that's not you, but it certainly does impact your health and well-being, and especially when you're at a conference and all these other things are stealing your energy. You don't need to give more energy away.
Right. Yep. And even if there's, just moving towards having better options means, like, maybe you do drink and you want a glass of wine, and then you want to switch to something else, right? And so just having options that are, adult drinks doesn't mean it has to have alcohol in it. And so if we could just have better options then people can choose, right? And a meeting, a lot of times we go to these conferences, it is exhausting. So one glass of wine is fine, or one whatever you want to have is fine, but then you want to switch. And then those that don't want to drink have options to have things that don't drink. So it's definitely, and PDA did an amazing job. I'm so super, they jumped onto it right away. And I super appreciate that, because there's so much positive, we've heard so much positive feedback from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love how, like, shifting the paradigm, like we were all at Star of the North and they had a big party where they had candle making and bouquet making and fun picture taking. And it was a different networking party, completely sober. So, you know, there's so many different options of ways that we could do this different.
100%.
Uh-oh, shoot. I hope she comes back. She froze.
Laura's frozen.
Yeah.
I was going to say, whilst Laura's Laura's back.
Right.
You temporarily
Yeah,
froze.
totally.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say that in terms of just when you're out socializing with people, I have always been an advocate that if I'm going to get in the car, I will not drink anything, like 100%. That's just my rule. It's always been my rule since I started driving when I was 17. But it's really interesting how people who drink are threatened by you not drinking. That do you find that it almost highlights the fact that they are drinking, that you're not drinking, that a comment has to be made about the fact that you're not drinking?
Yes.
So
And actually I can speak to that. I'm going to speak a little high level on that, why that happens. Alcohol is an addictive substance. There's no question. If anybody drinks alcohol long enough, they will get addicted. Now, when you get addicted, there's all these theories, and is it genetics, all that stuff, but alcohol is an addictive substance. So when I don't drink alcohol, others feel the awkwardness of like, why aren't you drinking? And my big thing when I first got sober is people would tell me how much they drink or don't drink and when they drink. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, you can drink when you want. This is my choice. It's because of this, we feel this guilt and we feel this, like, we have to explain, and we need to understand that the issue isn't the person. Like, this is what I wish I could tell people. It's not you. You can do you. It's what it is. But if we actually admit that we are putting an addictive substance in our body, it gets a little awkward and hard, right? And so we justify. And so they feel, you know, that there's this need. And that's, again, for me, it's like, I don't care. You do you, and I'll do me. I'm here if you do think you have an issue, you know, a relationship with alcohol, you know, that you have a question about, great. But it is that sort of, I don't know, I guess a little bit of guilt or a little bit of justification. And that, again, makes it sometimes a little awkward and hard for the person who doesn't drink and they're trying to make, you know, good choices. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and it's completely around that whole relationship with an addiction.
It makes me feel shy.
Yeah.
When somebody highlights that fact, and be like, they don't say you should drink, but it's just like, you're not drinking. No, we know my husband does so much exercise and he gets up at 5 a.m. in the morning and he swapped to drinking that athletic brewing stuff on an evening, and we can make people super uncomfortable. If the two of us, I'm having a kombucha and he's having an athletic brewing.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and like I said, in our community, there's people who are soberish, sober curious, all the way through, you know, in recovery. Right. And for those that have overcome addiction, it is a harder, it's a harder thing. And so I've had people come up to me to say, why do you even need to do this? Like, they don't drink. They never drank. Why is this an issue? And I'm like, well, for you, it probably hasn't been, because this is just a life choice. This is what you've lived with wherever. But for people who have had to overcome addiction, this is a harder thing for them. Right. And there's an example I have of it, of like, I was at an event and I went up, and I personally I read a book that changed my life, that I do not feel like I have a problem with alcohol. I choose not to drink. It totally changed the way I feel about alcohol, but still I relate to the pressure. Right. And I went up to a bar, and this bartender, I said, what do you have that's non-alcoholic? He's like, Coke, Sprite, Diet Coke, what do you want? Now, if I was in recovery and I was paranoid or just not like uncomfortable, that would have been triggering for me, right? Now, my example of this is the bartender didn't even realize what he was doing. And I was like, I'll have a Coke, thanks. And I walked away, right? The guy behind me probably went up and said, what kind of beer do you have? And the bartender was probably like, Corona, Bud Light, Coors Light, what do you want? Like, it was probably the bartender just tired, one question after another. But the guy behind me probably just was like, oh, I'll have a Bud, and walked away. But for somebody who's in recovery, that might have been a hard conversation. And so those are just kind of the things that if we can build a community where it's just people just choose to drink or not drink, and that's your choice and there's no questions, that makes it a little easier, I think, for people who are like, no, thank you. And then we just move on, right? As a society, we don't unintentionally put that pressure or that awkwardness on people who have had to overcome or are overcoming an addiction.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And so many ways that we can be more understanding and gracious and loving in everybody's own choice.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, you talk about this community. I'd love you to describe what this is, what your community is, how people could find out about it. I know that you have a big tent philosophy. I'd love to know a little more about that. So can you just highlight a little bit about your community?
Sure. So this is the big pivot. So you guys are the first to hear about this. This literally just pivoted in the last week. We launched in dental originally. So we we're dental, Margy and I are both in dental. We have our dental community. And the goal was to build up dental originally and then kind of duplicate this in different industries. We've pivoted in the sense now that what we've realized is that if we stay just in dental, it's going to take us a lot longer and a lot more focus to try to build up dental and then duplicate this in other industries. And every conversation we have, people are like, what about my spouse? What about real estate? They're the worst. What about lawyers? What about every industry has this, right? And ultimately what we want to do in this community is serve the people. And so the people are literally just professionals who are analyzing or choosing not to drink, their relationship with alcohol. And so we've pivoted to it's not just dental. We do have our dental community. And what we hope is one day we'll have hundreds in here, and there'll be a realtor group and a legal group because we all go to the same industry events, right? So everyone won't be at the same conferences, but ultimately in the community, it's about serving our members. And so the pivot is literally around, it's opened up to every industry, and they receive a daily email that's going to have, journal prompts or wellness tips or mocktail options or conversations around how to say no, thank you without feeling awkward, or all of the things that we deal with, and celebrate people's choices around this specific topic, because we want professionals who are racing the race, running from plane to plane, standing in front of conferences, to get a daily reminder of the fact that we think you rock because you have chosen the choice that you have around alcohol. And then we have an expert series. So once a month, we'll have experts come on, which we would love to have you guys join us for that, to bring other things to help. Because once people put down alcohol, if they choose not to do that, that doesn't take away the rest of life's problems. In fact, it brings it right to your face, because we're no longer self-medicating or numbing. We're now having to deal with real things that we used alcohol to numb. So we have an expert series, and then we have 2 mastermind calls a month. One is co-ed and one is women's only, to just come and talk about issues around how to travel, or how to deal with stress, or how to do things without alcohol. So we kind of think of it as not a day one. We're not here to help people get sober, but we are here to support sober choices and celebrate them for anyone who, it's kind of like the graduated level, whatever you're at, we want to be here to support you as you move forward in that. And then eventually more in the industry space. We're working with the conferences as they come to us. And I think as it grows, we're going to get more and more. But really, we want to be here first to serve the community.
I think that's wonderful, because I just think so many applications to that where, you know, you go to an industry event, but in your daily life, you meet with your realtor, and where do they want to go? They want to go for drinks at the end of the day, or
Right.
you meet with, you know, a different group, and it's the same thing. So by opening this to others, that conversation becomes easier, exponentially faster.
Yeah, for sure. And I think all industries, you feel like it's just your industry, but I think when we start to share more, it's going to be like, oh no, we shut down our conferences, and the next week, the next conference comes in and they're selling XYZ and they're going to the happy hours and the next conference. And so to realize that this isn't just, I mean, we understand that, but to be able to share that it's across the board, this is a life issue that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I think it's a great pivot, because why only start one little flame in one place? You might as well just start a lot of fires.
And start the fire.
I love it. Can I quote that, Karen? I'm going to quote that.
You can.
Okay. All right. The mint door, I got it from here. That's awesome. I love it.
Well, and there's another quote that we love, and I don't remember who said it. It's not ours, but wind blows out a flame or a candle. Wind blows out a candle, but fuels a fire.
Oh my gosh. That's another great one.
Isn't that a good one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't remember who said it. It wasn't me, but we love that quote.
But you said it today, so I'm going to give you credit for that.
Awesome. Speaking of like quotes, and you have a term that I'd love to just explore here. You have a sober wingman. Can you explain what a sober wingman is?
Yeah, that's a coined term. So they're in the sobriety world. There's sober-ish. These are all new words that are coming out as this is becoming a movement. So sober-ish is just someone who's like, once in a while you might have a glass of champagne at a wedding or something, but you primarily don't drink. Sober curious is somebody who's curious about what does sober look like and sober lifestyle. But Margy actually coined this in that first lunch that we met that day when we were at the conference, sober wingman. And that is literally somebody who is drinks, whatever, but is in support of this movement and support of the people in their lives that are sober. And so in this case, for example, my husband hasn't drank for almost 20 years. But when we would go out, if I was drinking and somebody was, I don't know, putting the pressure on him to have a beer, or I knew that this was going to be a very alcohol driven, whatever, maybe we would choose not to go to something, or maybe I would make sure that he had drinks there that he could drink that didn't have alcohol in them. So it's the person who's kind of your wingman, who's got you, the blind spot for you. And when the pressure gets a lot, or when it gets dumb or whatever, that person isn't just, they're thinking about you too. And so that person who's just your right hand in your sober journey is your sober wingman. And there's a lot of people in our community who actually are, because they believe in this. Many times sober wingmen have had family issues around addiction or other people in their family, and they are very careful to make sure that that's not going to be their journey, and they want to support this idea so that no other families have to go through that. So that's a Sober Life Rocks coined word right there.
Love it. That's a great one. And here's to many, many, many more sober wingmen, sober curious, sober-ish, and Sober Life Rocks members. So
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So you have a website. It's simple, soberliferocks.com.
Yep.
All right. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. And if someone is just really wanting to have a conversation with you, what's the easiest way to reach out to you?
Yep. I'm Laura at Sober Life Rocks. Margy is Margy at Sober Life Rocks. On social media, we used to be Sober Life Rocks Dental. We're now Sober Life Rocks Professionals. So if you just search Sober Life Rocks Professionals, we tried to get Sober Life Rocks, but there's a group already. They haven't done anything in like 3 years, but it's sitting on Facebook. So we couldn't grab that one. So that's why we're Sober Life Rocks Professionals. But it really works. It works for the pivot of what we want to do. So just find us on any social platform or reach out to us via email.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, we'll make sure all those links are in the show notes, and please reach out. And kudos to you. I think, right, Karen, we need to celebrate. Take your hand, pat yourself on the back, and maybe do like a big hug from us.
There we go.
Yeah, we absolutely adore everything that you bring to the table. Your enthusiasm and this movement is really important. And so thank you so much for sharing with us today about Sober Life Rocks. And here's to its success and growth as the years go on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're so glad to be connected with you guys and all that you're doing. So thanks for having us, me and my partner who couldn't make it on this podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, listeners, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Know that we adore you, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Mint Door Podcast. Bye.
Bye.
We adore our listeners. Connect with us at themintdoor.net. We